The delivery man knocked and said, "Ma'am, your family ordered a hospital bed for your room." I stood there confused. Nobody had asked me. That night, I overheard my son and his wife laughing in the kitchen. "Once she's bedridden, we'll have full control of everything." I stayed silent. The next morning, they walked into my room and found something that made them scream. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The truck arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was a large, white panel van with a medical supply company logo on the side. I was in the front garden, weeding around the daffodils that were just beginning to fade. The driver parked with two wheels on the curb, crushing the edge of my flower bed. The tires left dark impressions in the soft soil. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. Two men in matching blue uniforms got out. The younger one consulted a tablet. "Eleanor Hawthorne," he called out. "Yes," I said, walking toward the driveway. "There must be a mistake. I didn't order anything." The older man with a thick mustache glanced at his sheet. "Delivery for you, one adjustable bed with rails and a mattress." He spoke as if reading a grocery list. "Where do you want it?" A coldness settled in my stomach. "An adjustable bed? I don't need an adjustable bed. You have the wrong address." The younger man pointed to his screen. "Hawthorne, 2147 Maple Lane, paid for by a Marcus Hawthorne. Instructions say to set it up in the sewing room." He looked at me for confirmation. The name, my son's name, hit me with the force of a physical blow. I could not move. The men waited, shifting their weight. The sun felt too bright. "The sewing room," I repeated, my voice distant to my own ears. "It's upstairs, the first door on the right." I led them inside. My house, which usually felt like an extension of myself, suddenly seemed unfamiliar. They maneuvered the large, flat boxes up the staircase, their boots heavy on the wooden steps. I followed, a silent observer. They brought the pieces into my sewing room, the space where I kept my fabric and my late husband's old desk. They began unpacking lengths of chrome steel and a large, vinyl-covered mattress. I left them to it and went to the kitchen. My hands were steady as I picked up the phone. I called Marcus's cell. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. His cheerful recorded voice asked me to leave a message. I did not. I called his office line. His assistant said he was in a meeting and could not be disturbed. I stood by the sink, looking out at the ruined edge of my flower bed. The men finished their work. The older one handed me a clipboard with a receipt. "All set up. You need a hand learning the controls." "No," I said. "I can figure it out." He nodded. "Your son, he said you might need some help getting used to it. Said you've been having some trouble." I signed the paper without looking at him. "Did he?" They left. The house was quiet again, but the quiet was different. It was a waiting quiet. I climbed the stairs slowly. The door to the sewing room was open. They had pushed my sewing table against the wall. In the center of the room stood the bed. It was a mechanical-looking thing, all levers and buttons with 2 side rails that could be raised and lowered. The mattress was thick and clinical. It did not belong. It was an invasion, a declaration. I did not cry. The initial shock was hardening into something else. A focused, analytical coldness. I am a retired librarian. My skill is finding patterns in seemingly disconnected information. A hospital bed delivered without consultation. My son paying for it. His office avoiding my call. The delivery man's comment. The pieces were there. I just could not yet see the picture they formed. I made lunch. I ate it. I performed the ordinary rituals of the day, but my mind was working. I cataloged every interaction with Marcus and Chloe from the past few months. The increased frequency of their visits. Their suggestions that the house was too much for me. Chloe's comments about my forgetfulness. Citing moments I had chosen to ignore a question I found trivial. Marcus's hints about the value of the property and the stress of managing assets at my age. By evening, I had a hypothesis. It was monstrous, but it fit the facts. They arrived just after 7, letting themselves in with the key I had given Marcus years ago. I was in the living room, pretending to read. "Mom," Marcus called, his voice too loud, too hearty. "We came to check on you." Chloe followed, holding a casserole dish. "We brought dinner, so you don't have to tire yourself out cooking." I marked my page and set the book down. That was thoughtful. My voice was calm. I watched them. Marcus's eyes darted around the room, avoiding direct contact with mine. Chloe's smile was fixed, a perfect curve of practiced concern. We ate in the kitchen. They talked about their jobs, about traffic, about nothing. The conversation was a performance. I played my part, the slightly weary mother, grateful for the company. After dinner, Chloe insisted on cleaning up. "You go rest, Ellie. You look pale." I did not feel pale. I felt acutely aware. I said I would go upstairs. I climbed the steps and went into my bedroom. I closed the door but did not latch it. I changed into my night clothes. Then I stood in the darkness of my room, listening. The sound of running water from the kitchen stopped. Their voices, lowered but clear, carried up the staircase and along the hallway. "Went smoothly?" Chloe asked. "The delivery guys said she was confused," Marcus replied. "A cabinet door closed. But she signed for it. It's upstairs." "Good. Dr. Simmons's office will call tomorrow about the referral for a home health assessment. Once that report comes in." "It still feels extreme, Chloe." "It's for her own good, Marcus. She's not safe alone. We're not taking anything from her. We're managing it for her. The trust, the house, it's just practical. Once she's settled, we can sell this place. It's what she'd want deep down, for us to be secure." There was a long pause. I held my breath, my hand on the cool wood of the door. "I guess," Marcus said, his voice heavy with a manufactured reluctance. "It's just hard." "I know, baby, but it's time. She'll be comfortable, we'll make sure of it." I heard the soft sound of a kiss. In the dark of my hallway, I stood perfectly still. The last piece slid into place. The hypothesis was confirmed. This was not care. It was a coup. A soft, legal, familial coup. They were not here to help me. They were here to erase me. To package my competence and my independence as infirmity, to box up my life and sell it off. The coldness in my stomach spread through my limbs. The grief came first, a sharp, silent blade. It was followed immediately by a wave of such pure, clarifying anger that my vision seemed to sharpen. The hallway, the slice of light from the kitchen below, the shadow of my own silhouette against the wall, everything was in perfect, stark focus. My son, my only child, and his wife in my kitchen dividing my life like an estate sale. The grief was for the boy he had been. The anger was for the man he had become. And the determination, which rose now like a steel column within me, was for myself. I did not make a sound. I stepped back into my bedroom and closed the door properly. I sat on the edge of my own familiar, comfortable bed and looked at the shapes of my furniture in the moonlight. They thought they were dealing with a confused old woman. They were wrong. They were dealing with a librarian, a cataloger of facts, a researcher, and they had just handed me the primary source materials for my own defense. The game, as they called it, was on, but they did not know the rules, and I intended to write them. The silence of that night was not for sleeping. It was for planning. I sat in the dark for a long time, mapping the terrain of their scheme. The hospital bed was the physical anchor of their narrative. Elinor is frail. The promised call from a doctor's office would provide false medical credibility. Their constant, smothering care would be the performance for witnesses. The goal was clear: create a paper trail and a perceptual reality that would justify declaring me incompetent. Then, control of everything would default to Marcus. I understood the sequence. Therefore, I could disrupt it. When the first gray light of Wednesday morning filtered through the blinds, I was already dressed. I made my bed with precise corners. I went downstairs and prepared breakfast as I always did: oatmeal, a pot of tea, sliced fruit. The normalcy of the routine was a comfort and a disguise. They came down just after 8. Marcus looked tired. Chloe was brisk, her cheerfulness like a bright, thin veneer. "Good morning, Mom," Marcus said, kissing my cheek. His touch felt clinical. "How did you sleep?" "Well enough," I said, pouring tea into my favorite cup. I did not look at him directly. I watched their reflections in the polished surface of the toaster. "And you?" "Oh, we worried about you all night," Chloe said, opening the refrigerator. She took out the orange juice. With that new bed here and you all alone, it must feel strange. It is a piece of furniture, I said, stirring my tea slowly. It holds no feeling. Marcus exchanged a glance with Chloe. It was a quick, meaningful look. See, confused, detached. Well, Marcus said, sitting heavily at the table. The company said a nurse would call today to explain the features, and Dr. Simmons's office might reach out. Just a routine check-in since we expressed some concerns. I took a sip of tea. The heat was steadying. What concerns? Chloe brought the juice to the table. Oh, Ellie, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Everyone slows down, forgetting little things. That dizzy spell you had last week in the garden. We just want to make sure you're safe. I had not had a dizzy spell. I had bent over to pull a weed and stood up too quickly, a momentary lightheadedness anyone might experience. In their story, it was a symptom. I see, I said. I ate a spoonful of oatmeal. That is very attentive of you. They relaxed just slightly. My apparent acquiescence was the signal they wanted. They began to talk between themselves about their plans for the day. Marcus had a client meeting. Chloe needed to run errands. Their conversation excluded me, as if I were already an invalid in the room, a piece of furniture myself. I observed it all from behind the rim of my cup. I noted the patronizing tone, the simplified explanations, the way Chloe patted my hand after refilling my water glass. Each gesture was a data point. Each word was evidence. After they left, promising to check in later, the house was mine again. But the clock was now ticking. I cleared the dishes, washed them, and dried them. I put everything away in its exact place. Then I put on my gardening shoes and a wide-brimmed hat. My garden shed is a small, wooden structure at the back of the property. It holds tools, pots, bags of soil. It also holds an old, corded telephone installed decades ago for convenience. I had never bothered to remove it. Marcus and Chloe never went in there. They considered it dusty and unimportant. I entered, closing the door behind me. The air smelled of peat moss and aged wood. I moved a sack of fertilizer and lifted the phone's receiver. There was a dial tone. I pulled a small address book from my pocket. My hands were completely steady. I dialed the number from memory. It rang twice. Gloria Richardson. The voice was the same, clear, firm, no nonsense. A voice that commanded courtrooms for 40 years. Gloria, it's Ellie. A pause, then a shift in tone, warm but alert. Ellie, it's been a few weeks. Everything all right? No, I said. My voice was low and even. It is not. I need your help. Not as a friend visiting for tea. I need you as my attorney. The line was silent for 3 seconds. I could picture her face, the sharp intelligence focusing. Understood. What is the nature of the problem? My son and his wife are engaged in a campaign to declare me incompetent. They delivered a hospital bed to my home yesterday without my knowledge or consent. They are fabricating medical concerns. Their objective is to gain control of my house and assets. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Not shock, but professional recognition. Elder financial abuse, predatory guardianship tactics. Are you in immediate physical danger? No, the danger is legal and psychological. They are building a case. Have you confronted them? No, they believe I am unaware and compliant. Good, do not confront them. Document everything. Every interaction, every comment, every piece of paper. Do you have your documents secure? Deed, will, financial statements. They are in my safe deposit box at First Federal. Leave them there. Do not bring them into the house. I will need to see them. We will need to draft new documents immediately. A will, a durable power of attorney for healthcare and finances, nomming someone other than Marcus. Do you have a successor in mind? You, I said without hesitation. There was another pause. I am honored, Ellie, and I will do it, but you must understand this will be a war, a quiet paper war. They will not give up easily. I do not want them to give up easily, I said, looking at a shaft of sunlight cutting through the shed's dusty window. I want them to be defeated completely. Gloria's voice held a hint of grim approval. Then we will build a fortress. Can you come to my office tomorrow? 2 o'clock. Use the back entrance. Tell no one. I will be there. Ellie, she said, her tone softening for a fraction. I am sorry this is happening. The sympathy threatened to unravel the cold knot inside me. I could not afford that. Thank you, but save the sorrow for later. For now, I need strategy. Understood. Tomorrow, 2:00, bring your keys for the deposit box. And Ellie, be careful. I hung up the phone. I stood in the quiet shed, the plan no longer just a theory in my mind. It had a shape now. It had an architect. I replaced the sack of fertilizer over the phone. I went back into the garden. I weeded for an hour, my movements methodical and calm. The physical work grounded me. When I heard Chloe's car return in the early afternoon, I was on my knees near the daffodils, repairing the damage from the delivery truck's tires. Ellie, you shouldn't be out here in the sun without help, she called, walking toward me. I looked up, squinting. The sun is gentle, the work is satisfying. She stood over me, a silhouette blocking the light. Let me help you up, you must be tired. I allowed her to take my elbow and pull me to my feet. I made a small show of brushing the dirt from my pants, of taking a slow breath. I saw her eyes catalog the performance. There, she said, her smile tight. Why don't you go lie down for a bit? I'll bring you some water. Perhaps I will, I said, letting my shoulders slump just a degree. I did feel a little lightheaded just now. The triumph that flickered in her eyes was so brief, so well masked, that anyone else would have missed it. I did not. I turned and walked toward the house, feeling her gaze on my back. Every step was a calculation. Every word was a move on a board they did not know we were playing on. The stillness was over. The counterplan had begun. The performance of lightheadedness in the garden served its purpose. Chloe's satisfied observation confirmed they believed their narrative was taking root. That evening, they were solicitous, urging me to take it easy and suggesting I might want to try the new bed for its support. I declined politely, citing a preference for my own mattress. The exchange was calm, a quiet tug-of-war over a piece of furniture that represented so much more. Thursday morning arrived. I told them I had a routine dental cleaning appointment, an existing engagement they could verify from my wall calendar. They offered to drive me. I declined, saying I enjoyed the drive and the independence. Marcus looked relieved. My insistence on normal activities complicated their story of a woman in decline, but my supposed errand also gave them a few hours of unsupervised time in my house. I knew they would use it to look around, to solidify their plans. I needed them to feel secure, to feel they were in control. I left at 11. I drove my sedan, taking my usual route toward town. I passed my dentist's office. I continued to the downtown branch of First Federal Bank. The safe deposit box room was cool and silent, a vault within a vault. The attendant, a young man who knew me from my monthly visits, nodded respectfully. Mrs. Hawthorne, right this way. He led me to the private viewing room. I placed the long metal box on the table. The key turned with a solid click. Inside were the artifacts of my adult life, the deed to the house paid in full by my husband and me 20 years ago, the wills my husband, now obsolete, and my own, which named Marcus as sole beneficiary and executor, investment statements, the life insurance policy, the title to my car, the marriage certificate, the birth certificate. A few pieces of jewelry my mother had left me. I looked at the old will. It was a simple document created after my husband's death, a gesture of love and trust. To leave everything to my son had seemed the natural order of things. Now, the paper felt like a betrayal waiting to happen, a legal pathway for my own erasure. I took everything. I placed the documents in a large, ordinary manila envelope. I returned the empty box to its slot, thanked the attendant, and walked out into the midday sun. Gloria Richardson's law office was in a converted Victorian house on the other side of town. I parked on a side street and approached the back entrance, as instructed. A discreet placard by the door read, GR Legal Consultations. I knocked. She opened the door herself. Gloria was a tall woman my age, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a crisp linen shirt and trousers. She did not smile, but her grip on my arm was firm and warm. Ellie, Come in, no one saw you. I was careful. Her office was lined with books, not the decorative kind, but thick, well-used legal volumes. The air smelled of lemon, wood polish, and coffee. She directed me to a chair opposite her wide, orderly desk. "Show me," she said. I opened the envelope and laid the documents out before her. She examined each one with rapid, practiced eyes. She nodded, making occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. "The current will is a problem," she stated. "It gives him everything and makes him executor. It's the cornerstone of their plan. We replace it with one that disinherits him and his spouse completely for reasons of attempted fraud and undue influence. We name a neutral third party as executor. Me, initially, but we can name a trust company for longevity. We also need a durable power of attorney for finances and healthcare, effective immediately, nomming me as your agent. This revokes any previous documents and prevents him from petitioning to be appointed as your guardian." "Will it hold?" I asked. My voice was calm. "Against a challenge, absolutely. The key is your testamentary capacity, your mental soundness at the time of signing. We will document it thoroughly. I have already contacted Dr. Ammon, a colleague who specializes in geriatric psychiatry. He is independent, ethical, and discreet. He can examine you next week and provide a report affirming your competence. That report, combined with these new documents created asterisk before any legal action from them, will be an impenetrable wall." She spoke with a certainty that was like a solid floor beneath my feet. "What about the house?" "The deed is in your name alone. They cannot touch it. The power of attorney gives me the authority to manage it for you if they somehow manage to get you declared incapacitated temporarily, which I will prevent. But the ultimate protection is the new will. It severs their financial incentive." "I want to leave the house to the City Library Foundation," I said. The idea had come to me in the safe deposit room. "For a children's literacy program, in my and Robert's names." Gloria looked at me for a long moment. A slow, deep smile touched her lips. It was not a happy smile, but one of profound respect. "That is perfect. It is specific, charitable, and completely excludes them. It will be psychologically devastating and legally ironclad." She drafted the documents then and there on her computer. The quiet clicking of the keyboard and the hum of the printer were the only sounds. She explained each clause as she went. The language was cold and precise. "I intentionally make no provision for my son, Marcus James Hawthorne, or his wife, Chloe Marie Hawthorne, due to actions undertaken by them to undermine my autonomy and exploit my assets." Hearing the words formalized was like hearing a sentence passed. There was a finality to it that closed a door in my heart. I felt no satisfaction, only a necessary cold. When the documents were printed, Gloria called in a witness from another office, a young paralegal who clearly revered her. We signed in multiple places. Gloria notarized my signature with her official stamp. The paralegal signed as a witness. The process was mundane, bureaucratic. The consequences were monumental. "I will keep the originals in my fire safe here," Gloria said, placing the executed documents into a folder. "You will take copies. Do not bring them into your house. Keep them in the trunk of your car or somewhere they cannot find them. Destroy the old will. Do it where you cannot be observed." I nodded. "The psychiatric examination. How do we arrange it without their knowledge?" "Dr. Ammon makes house calls for established clients. I will tell him you are my dear friend considering some estate planning and want a baseline assessment. He will come to your home next Tuesday afternoon. Can you ensure they are not there?" "I will ensure it." Gloria leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. "Ellie, listen. The legal fortress is now built. The next phase is behavioral. You must make them believe their plan is working, right up until the moment you choose to reveal it is not. That requires acting. Can you do that?" "I have been a mother for 35 years, I said, gathering the copies of my new will. "I have been acting the part of a happy, fulfilled woman since the day I realized my son saw me as a function and not a person. This will be no different." Gloria's eyes held a flicker of shared pain. "Then let the performance begin." I left through the back door. The manila envelope in my handbag felt heavy with purpose. I drove to a large shopping center, used a public shredder in the office supply store to destroy my old will, and then bought groceries to support my cover story. When I returned home, just after 3, Chloe was arranging flowers in the kitchen. "How was the dentist, Ellie?" she asked, her voice bright. "Fine, no cavities," I said, placing the grocery bags on the counter. "The hygienist said my teeth are in excellent condition for my age." The word age hung in the air. Chloe's smile tightened. "Well, that's one thing, I suppose. Did you get tired? You were out a long time." "A little," I conceded, allowing a slight weariness into my posture as I put away a carton of milk. "I think I will go upstairs and rest for a bit before dinner." "Of course," she said, her tone dripping with faux concern. "That's exactly what you should do." I climbed the stairs past the closed door of the sewing room. Inside my bedroom, I closed the door. I did not rest. I sat at my dressing table and looked at my reflection. The face that looked back was composed, the eyes clear and sharp. The documents were safe. The legal foundation was laid. The paper fortress was complete. Now, it was time to lure the invaders inside its walls. The legal fortress was complete. The documents were signed, witnessed, and secured in Gloria's fireproof safe. A copy was hidden in the spare tire compartment of my car. The old will was confetti in a public shredder. My next task was not one of paperwork, but of performance. I had to convince the directors of this cruel play that their leading lady was following the script. I began the next morning, Friday. I rose at my usual time, but moved with deliberate slowness. I allowed a small, ordinary mishap to occur. I placed the sugar bowl next to the teapot instead of in its usual spot. Chloe noticed immediately when she entered the kitchen. "Looking for this, Ellie?" she said, her voice sing-song as she moved the bowl back to its correct place. Her hand lingered on my shoulder. "It's right here where it always is." "Of course. Thank you," I murmured, letting my gaze seem slightly unfocused for a moment before I blinked and resumed making my tea. I observed them over breakfast with a new perspective. Every comment was a probe. Every gesture was an assessment. "The nurse from the medical supply company called while you were out yesterday," Marcus said, spreading jam on his toast. "She can come Monday to go over the bed's functions, safety features like the rails." "I am sure I can figure it out," I said, keeping my tone mild, non-confrontational. "It's for your safety, Mom," he said, the phrase now a familiar refrain. "We just worry." I nodded slowly, as if processing required effort. "I know you do." The phone rang later that morning. Chloe answered it in the living room. I was in the adjacent dining room, polishing silver that did not need polishing. I could hear her side of the conversation clearly. "Yes, this is Chloe Hawthorne, her daughter-in-law, Dr. Simmons's office. Thank you for calling back. Yes, we're quite concerned, a home health assessment." "That would be wonderful. She is resistant, of course, but it's clearly needed next Wednesday. That works perfectly. We'll make sure she's here." She hung up. I heard the soft tap of her fingers on her phone, likely sending a triumphant text to Marcus. I continued polishing a soup spoon, my reflection distorted in its curved surface. The stage was being set around me. The nurse on Monday. The doctor's assessment on Wednesday. They were accelerating their timeline. I needed to give them a reason to believe their acceleration was warranted and that I was no obstacle. The opportunity came Saturday afternoon. We were in the kitchen after a quiet lunch. Marcus was at the table looking at his laptop. Chloe was wiping down already clean counters. I was putting away dishes. The moment required a credible trigger. I chose a simple action, reaching for a plate on a high shelf. I stretched, grasped the edge of the plate, and then let my body go subtly slack. I allowed the plate to slip from my fingers. It did not break. It clattered loudly into the sink. I brought my hand to my forehead. I closed my eyes and let my knees bend slightly, catching myself on the counter's edge. "Ellie," Chloe's voice was instantly alert. I heard Marcus's chair scrape back. "Mom." I took a shallow, deliberate breath. I'm fine, just a little dizzy spell. It passed." I opened my eyes. They were both standing close, their faces a study in manufactured alarm and very real anticipation. This was the evidence they needed. "You're white as a sheet," Chloe declared, though I knew my complexion had not changed. She took my arm firmly. You need to sit down. Now, Marcus, help me. I can walk, I protested weakly, but I allowed my weight to lean into her support. It was an intimate act of treachery, her arm linked with mine. They guided me out of the kitchen and into the living room to the large sofa. I sank into the cushions, letting my body appear boneless. I kept my eyes half-lidded. Should we call someone? Marcus asked, his voice tight. I think we should use the blood pressure cuff, Chloe said, already moving toward the hallway closet where they had stored various monitoring equipment they'd begun to accumulate. She returned with a digital cuff and wrapped it around my arm. The band tightened automatically. It was cold. We waited. The machine beeped. 120/80, Chloe read. Perfectly normal. She sounded almost disappointed. See, I'm fine, I said, making a move to sit up straighter. Resting blood pressure doesn't mean anything during a postural episode, Chloe said, repeating a phrase I was sure she'd read online. You need to stay put. I'm going to get you some water. She left for the kitchen. Marcus stood over me, shifting his weight from foot to foot. You scared us, Mom. I'm sorry, I said, looking up at him. I tried to see my little boy in the face of this anxious, greedy stranger. I could not find him. It was just a moment. I stood up too fast. It's more than that, he said, but he didn't meet my eyes. He was looking past me at the doorway where Chloe would return. He was following her lead. Chloe came back with a glass of water and 2 white pills on a saucer. Here, take these. They'll help. What are they? I asked, allowing a hint of suspicion to creep into my voice. Just a mild aspirin for the potential headache. Her smile was plastic. Doctor's orders. They were not aspirin. I knew the shape and color of my own aspirin. These were smaller, rounder. A sedative, perhaps. Something to make me drowsy, more compliant. A chemical aid to their narrative. I had a choice. To refuse would mark me as difficult, paranoid, a symptom in their eyes. To accept was a risk. I looked from the pills to Chloe's unwavering smile to Marcus's averted gaze. The performance required commitment. Thank you, dear, I said. I took the pills, placed them on the back of my tongue, and swallowed a mouthful of water. I made a show of swallowing hard. I did not take the pills. It was an old trick, one I had used as a child to avoid foul-tasting medicine. I kept them lodged in the curve of my tongue. When Chloe took the empty glass, I gave a small cough, bringing my hand to my mouth. I palmed the 2 wet pills and closed my fingers around them. I think I'd like to rest here for a while, I said, my voice subdued. Of course, Chloe said, draping a throw blanket over my legs. We'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything. They left me. I heard their hushed, urgent voices from the other room. I could not make out the words, but the tone was clear. Excited, grimly satisfied. I waited a full minute. Then I carefully sat up, opened my hand, and looked at the 2 pills, now slightly dissolved. I wrapped them in a tissue from the box on the side table and tucked the bundle into my pocket. I would flush them away later. I lay back down. The room was quiet. The afternoon sun streamed through the window. I had given them exactly what they wanted, a witnessed episode, a moment of demonstrated weakness, and a show of compliance. The bait was taken. The hook was set. Alone on the couch, I felt no fear. I felt a sharp, clean focus. The stumble was staged. The fall would be theirs. The staged stumble required a recovery period. I remained on the sofa for the better part of an hour, feigning a light doze. I could hear Marcus and Chloe moving through the house, their footsteps hushed, their voices a low, constant murmur of conspiracy. When I finally stirred and sat up, Chloe was at my side in an instant. How are you feeling, Ellie? Better, still a bit tired, I admitted, which was not entirely a lie. The emotional labor was exhausting. You see, she said, not to me, but to Marcus, who had entered the room. It's not safe. Things like this will keep happening. I looked down at my hands, folded in my lap. I allowed a slight tremor to run through them. It was a voluntary muscle movement, controlled and brief, but convincing from a distance. Perhaps you're right, I said, my voice softer than usual. It frightens me. This admission, this show of vulnerability was the key. I saw the change in their posture. The predatory concern softened into something more genuine, triumph. They believed they had broken through my resistance. "We're here, Mom," Marcus said, coming to sit on the coffee table opposite me. "We'll take care of everything." I nodded, then let my gaze wander to the window, as if seeking comfort in the familiar view. "You are both so busy, though, with your lives. I don't want to be a burden." The script wrote itself, each line a trigger for their desired response. "Don't be silly," Chloe chimed in. "Family is everything." I turned my head slowly back to them. "Family," I repeated, letting the word hang. "It would be nice to see more of it. It's been so long since we had a proper gathering." I paused, measuring their reactions. "I was thinking maybe at the end of the week, a dinner here." Marcus blinked. "A dinner, Mom, with how you're feeling." "I would like to do something normal," I insisted, injecting a frail stubbornness into my tone. "One last nice dinner with family, before." I let the sentence trail off, implying a surrender to their narrative of inevitable decline. Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. A dinner party could serve multiple purposes. It could be a display of their dedicated care in front of others. It could also be a way to showcase my deterioration to a wider audience, building their case. "Who did you have in mind?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Your Uncle Lawrence," I said to Marcus. "We haven't seen him in months, and Mrs. Wilkins from next door. She's always asking after me, bringing over jam. It would be polite." Lawrence, my younger brother, was a retired engineer, skeptical and blunt. He had never warmed to Chloe, finding her manner insincere. Mrs. Wilkins was the neighborhood's kindly busybody, whose gossip network was both a nuisance and a powerful broadcasting tool. Marcus looked at Chloe. A silent communication passed between them. I could read it. Witnesses, credible witnesses. "I think that's a lovely idea, Ellie," Chloe said, her smile returning. "A nice, normal family dinner. It might lift your spirits." "But you shouldn't have to lift a finger," Marcus said, puffing up a little. "Chloe and I will handle everything. The cooking, the cleaning, you just rest." Perfect. I had maneuvered him into taking ownership of the event. "Would you, Marcus? That would be such a help. You could call Lawrence. You know he always enjoys hearing from you." This was a manipulation. Lawrence found Marcus pretentious and had said so at the last Thanksgiving, but appealing to Marcus's sense of importance was effective. "Of course," Marcus said, standing straighter. "I'll call Uncle Larry tonight." "Lawrence," I corrected gently. "He prefers Lawrence." "Right, Lawrence." He pulled out his phone, already scrolling for the number. The responsibility, the appearance of being the man in charge, was a potent distraction. Later that evening, after they had ordered groceries for the proposed dinner and were in the kitchen planning a menu, I excused myself to my bedroom. I closed the door and took my personal cell phone from my nightstand. I had a second, prepaid phone hidden in the garden shed for absolute secrecy, but for this call, my regular line was safe. Marcus and Chloe were engrossed in their planning. They would not interrupt. I dialed my brother's number. It rang 4 times. "Ellie," his voice was a gravelly baritone. "This is a surprise. Everything okay?" "I'm fine, Lawrence. How are you?" "Can't complain. Retired life is busy doing nothing. What's up?" "Marcus is going to call you. He's inviting you to a dinner here on Friday night." A pause. "Marcus is inviting me. Since when does he do the inviting? And since when do you have dinner parties on a Friday? You always said you liked a quiet weekend." My brother's observational skills were as sharp as ever. "It was my idea," I said, keeping my voice even. "I thought it would be nice. Mrs. Wilkins is coming, too." Another longer pause. I could hear the gears turning in his mind. "Ellie, what's going on over there? Is Chloe making you do this? Putting on some kind of show?" I chose my words with care. I could not reveal my hand, but I could plant a seed. "They've been very attentive lately, since they've been staying here. They're worried about me. They think I'm not myself." "You sound like yourself to me," he grumbled. "Sharp as a tack." "I'm glad you think so, but they see things differently. Marcus mentioned something about a home health assessment next week. It's all a bit overwhelming. The line was so quiet I thought we might have been disconnected. Then Lawrence let out a low breath. A health assessment. With you sounding like this on the phone. Ellie, are they pushing you into something? Do you need me to come over there right now? No, I said, firmly but quietly. Not right now. Come on Friday, have dinner. Keep your eyes open. And Lawrence, trust what you see, not what you're told. He understood. He was a man of facts and data. All right, he said, his voice dropping. I'll be there and I'll be watching. Thank you. I hung up, one witness primed. One ally, though he did not yet know the full extent of the battle. From downstairs, I could hear the faint sound of Chloe's laughter and Marcus's voice, confident and planning. They were setting the stage for my final act. Little did they know, I was the one writing the guest list, directing the players, and preparing the climax. The invitation was sent. The witnesses were gathered. The performance would proceed exactly as I intended. The dinner invitation was issued. The stage was set for Friday night. Now I needed two things: evidence and misdirection. The legal fortress was built, but I required undeniable proof of their intentions to seal their fate. I also needed to feed their certainty, to make them so confident in my decline they would grow careless. My brother Lawrence was the first thread. Our phone call had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. On Monday morning, while Marcus was at work and Chloe was at the gym, a 2-hour window she kept religiously, I made another call to him from the garden shed. Lawrence, I said when he answered, a quick question while I have a moment alone. You're alone, good. His tone was all business. What do you need? Do you still have that old digital camcorder? The small one Robert used to film Marcus's soccer games. A pause, probably in a box in the attic. Why? I may have a use for it, but more importantly, I need you to do something for me on Friday. During dinner, if Marcus or Chloe bring up my health or the house or anything to do with my safety, I need you to ask very specific questions. Such as, ask Marcus to explain the terms of a voluntary guardianship. Ask what doctor has diagnosed me. Ask to see the medical recommendation for the hospital bed that is currently in my sewing room. Press for specifics, not opinions. I heard him exhale, a low whistle. Hell, Ellie, it's that far along. They got a bed in there. They delivered it last week. They are moving quickly. Your questions will force them to state their plans in front of a witness. It will reveal their hand. And Mrs. Wilkins will have it broadcast to the neighborhood by Saturday, he said, understanding immediately. You're building a record. I am. Can you do it? You bet I can. His voice hardened. I never trusted that woman he married. This confirms it. What do you need the camera for? Insurance, I said. I'll explain later. The next task required a trip to an electronics store. I drove to a large retail outlet in the next town. I purchased a small, discreet nanny camera. It was a black cube, no larger than a matchbox, with a wide-angle lens and motion-activated recording to a microSD card. It could be powered by a wall outlet or a built-in battery. I paid in cash. Back at home, the sewing room awaited. I entered and closed the door. The hospital bed dominated the space, a silent, cold monument to their ambition. I needed the camera to have a clear view of the bed and the doorway. I surveyed the room. On a high shelf among my collection of porcelain birds, a hobby from years past, was a small, white dove with outspread wings. It was hollow at the base. I carefully lifted the dove. Using a small drill bit from Robert's old toolbox, I carefully bored a tiny hole in the base, just large enough for the camera's lens to see through. I placed the camera inside, angling it downward. The power cord was thin and black. I ran it down the back of the shelf, behind a row of books, and plugged it into an outlet concealed by the drape of an old quilt hanging on the wall. From the front, the dove looked untouched. The tiny lens opening was invisible, unless you knew to look for it. I turned the camera on. A small red light glowed for a second, then turned off as it entered standby mode. It would begin recording when it detected motion in the room. I had ensured my face was not in its field of view during setup. The final piece was the misdirection. I needed them to believe their narrative was being internally validated by me. In my bedroom, I retrieved an old, leather-bound journal from the bottom of my jewelry box. It was from many years ago, only half filled with notes about garden plans and book titles. I had not written in it for a decade. I sat at my desk with a black pen. I forged entries for the past 2 weeks, backdating them. My handwriting needed to show a subtle change, slightly shakier, less precise. I practiced on scrap paper first. April 10. Felt very tired today. Could not remember where I put my reading glasses. Found them in the refrigerator. Marcus and Chloe are so kind to check on me. April 14. Dizzy in the garden. The world spun. Had to sit on the grass, embarrassing. Chloe helped me inside. She says I shouldn't be alone. Maybe she is right. April 16. They brought a special bed. For my safety, it looks like a hospital. I don't like it, but Marcus says it's best. I don't want to be a burden. The entries were pathetic, the script of a frightened woman losing her grip. They were also perfect bait. On Tuesday afternoon, as planned, Dr. Ammon arrived for my psychiatric evaluation. He was a small, neat man with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Chloe and Marcus were not home. We sat in the living room. He asked me a series of questions, some straightforward, some designed to test cognitive function and judgment. He had me remember a short list of words, draw a clock face, interpret a proverb. He asked about my mood, my daily activities, my understanding of current events. I answered everything accurately and calmly. I told him about the hospital bed, the planned assessment, my son and daughter-in-law's concerns. I presented the facts without visible emotion. He took notes. At the end of the hour, he gave a small, satisfied nod. Mrs. Hawthorne, based on this evaluation, I see no evidence of cognitive impairment or psychiatric condition that would impact your testamentary capacity or ability to manage your affairs. You are oriented, your memory is intact, and your judgment appears sound. Thank you, doctor. I will provide a detailed report to Attorney Richardson. It will be a powerful document. After he left, I felt a layer of armor click into place. His objective report was the keystone of my legal defense. Now to deploy the decoy. That evening, I accidentally left the old journal on the small table by my favorite armchair in the living room, open to the most recent fake entry. I went to the kitchen to start washing the dinner dishes, leaving the door ajar. Within minutes, I heard Chloe's footsteps pause in the living room. There was a long silence, then the faint rustle of a page being turned. Another silence. I continued washing a plate, my back to the doorway. When I turned around, Chloe was standing there, her expression a masterful blend of concern and pity. Ellie, I was just straightening up. I saw your journal, I couldn't help but peek. Oh, honey. She came forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. It's okay to be scared. We're here. I lowered my eyes as if ashamed. It's private. I know, I'm sorry. I won't mention it again. But her eyes were alight with the discovery. She had found the proof of my internal capitulation. She would tell Marcus. Their confidence would solidify. Later, I heard them talking in hushed, eager tones in their room. I passed by their door on my way to bed, catching only a fragment. Her own journal, Marcus. She's admitting it. It's almost over. I continued to my room. The web was woven. The camera was watching. The false trail was laid. All that remained was for the flies to land in the center where I was waiting. Friday arrived. The air in the house was thick with false festivity. Chloe had been cooking since midday, filling the kitchen with rich smells that felt oppressive. Marcus had arranged the dining table with our best china, a performance of normalcy. My role was to be the quiet, fatting centerpiece. I dressed carefully in a soft blue dress, one that was both presentable and suggested a certain vulnerability. I applied a light dusting of powder to dull the natural vitality of my skin. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who could be construed as wan, tired. It was the image they wanted to project. Lawrence arrived first, precisely at 6:30. He gave me a firm, one-armed hug, his eyes scanning my face. "You look good, Ellie," he said, his voice low. It was both a statement and a question. "I feel all right," I said, offering a thin smile. "Thank you for coming." He grunted, his attention already shifting to Marcus, who approached with outstretched hand. "Uncle Larry, good to see you." "Lawrence," my brother corrected, his handshake brief. "Place looks the same, smells different." Before Marcus could respond, the doorbell chimed. It was Mrs. Wilkins, bearing a basket of her famous peach preserves and an eagle-eyed curiosity. "Ellie, darling, it's been too long. And Marcus, Chloe, how wonderful you're here taking such good care of her." Her gaze swept over everything, the table, my dress, the slight droop I allowed in my shoulders. We moved to the living room for drinks. Chloe played the gracious hostess, distributing glasses of iced tea. I took a seat in my armchair, a throne from which I could observe the entire room. I sipped my water. The initial conversation was trivial. The weather, neighborhood news, Lawrence's retirement projects. Mrs. Wilkins did most of the talking, a stream of pleasant chatter. I watched Marcus and Chloe. They were a team, exchanging glances, waiting for their opening. It came as we moved to the dining table. The first course was served. Chloe began. "It's so nice to do this. We've been wanting to have everyone over, but with Ellie's health, it's been difficult to plan too far ahead." Mrs. Wilkins leaned forward. "Oh, are you not well, dear?" I gave a small, dismissive wave. "It's nothing, little things." "It's not nothing, Mom," Marcus said, his voice laden with somber concern. He looked at the other guests. "We've been worried for a while, forgetfulness, dizzy spells. She had a real scare last weekend, right in the kitchen. We had to catch her." Lawrence put down his fork. "A scare? What did her doctor say?" A beat of hesitation. Chloe filled it. "That's the process we're in now, getting a full assessment. It's so complex at this age, but we're doing everything we can to make the house safe. We even had a hospital bed delivered for the downstairs sewing room to save her the stairs on bad days." "A hospital bed?" Lawrence's eyebrows shot up. He looked at me. "You need a hospital bed, Ellie." I met his gaze, then looked down at my plate. They thought it was best. "It's for safety, Lawrence," Marcus said, a defensive edge entering his tone. "You're not here every day. You don't see the struggles." "What I see is my sister looking me in the eye and answering questions," Lawrence said flatly. "What's the actual diagnosis? What doctor ordered the bed?" The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Chloe's smile became brittle. "It's a preventative measure from Dr. Simmons, pending the full assessment." "So no diagnosis yet," Lawrence pressed. "And this assessment is that for a guardianship." Marcus flushed. "We're exploring all options to protect her. It's a voluntary process, for her benefit." "Voluntary?" Lawrence's voice was like gravel. "Ellie, is this voluntary?" All eyes turned to me. This was the moment. I let my hand tremble slightly as I reached for my water glass. I took a slow sip, buying a fraction of a second. I needed to feed their narrative while giving Lawrence the confirmation he sought. "They explain things to me," I said, my voice hesitant. "It's very confusing, the legal terms, they say it's to help." I looked from Lawrence to Mrs. Wilkins, whose face was a mask of rapt, horrified fascination. "I just want what's simplest." Chloe reached over and patted my hand. "And we'll handle all the complicated parts, Ellie. That's what family is for." Lawrence leaned back in his chair, his eyes hard on Marcus. He said nothing more, but the air was charged. He had asked his questions. The answers, vague and self-serving, had been given in front of a witness. The rest of the meal proceeded with a strained politeness. Chloe steered the conversation to trivial topics, but the damage was done. Mrs. Wilkins watched everything, her eyes missing nothing. The way Marcus avoided my gaze after Lawrence's questions, the proprietary way Chloe touched my shoulder, the untouched food on my plate. When dessert was finished, Lawrence announced he had an early morning. Mrs. Wilkins, sensing the evening was over, gathered her things. At the door, she clasped my hands. "You take care of yourself, Ellie. Call me if you need anything." Her tone suggested she expected to receive a far more detailed report soon, one she did not intend to get from me. Lawrence's goodbye was a firm squeeze of my arm. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said, the words a clear promise. After they left, the false energy drained from the room. Chloe began clearing the table with sharp, angry movements. Marcus poured himself a drink. "Your brother," Chloe spat, not bothering to lower her voice. "He was completely inappropriate, questioning us like we're criminals." "He's just protective," Marcus mumbled, but he sounded weary. "He's obstructive. He could ruin everything if we're not careful." She carried a stack of plates into the kitchen. "It just proves how necessary this is. People on the outside don't understand. They see her for 5 minutes and think she's fine. They don't live with the reality." I stood quietly in the hallway, listening. Their frustration was a good sign. It meant Lawrence's skepticism had struck a nerve. It meant they felt the need to move faster. "It doesn't matter," Marcus said, his voice gaining conviction. "The assessment is Wednesday. After that, it's out of his hands. It'll be a medical decision, not a family debate." I turned and walked slowly up the stairs, making my footsteps heavy. Let them hear my retreat. Let them think I was defeated, hiding in my room from the conflict they had created. Alone, I did not feel defeated. I felt the pieces aligning. The witnesses had seen the performance. They had heard the plans stated aloud. Lawrence was armed with doubts. Mrs. Wilkins was a vessel waiting to be filled with scandal. The dinner party was over. The private war was entering its final phase. Their move was scheduled for Wednesday. Mine would come before. The clock was ticking, and every tick was a step closer to the moment I would spring the trap. The morning after the dinner party was a Saturday. The house was quiet, but it was the quiet of a coiled spring. Marcus and Chloe slept late, exhausted from their performance and the tension Lawrence had introduced. I was awake at dawn. My first action was to check the nanny camera in the sewing room. I entered quietly, closing the door behind me. The red indicator light was off, meaning it was in standby. I had placed it there on Tuesday. 4 days of potential recordings. I needed to know what it had captured. I retrieved the small step stool from the closet. I climbed up and carefully lifted the porcelain dove from the shelf. I unplugged the thin power cord and opened the base. The microSD card was inside, no larger than my fingernail. I replaced the dove and plugged the camera back in. It would continue recording, but I now had the existing footage. I took the card to my bedroom, where I kept a small digital reader that connected to my tablet. I inserted the card. File after file appeared, labeled by date and time. The motion activation had captured many hours of empty room, but also key moments. I fast-forwarded through the footage. There was Chloe, alone in the room on Wednesday, running her hand over the vinyl mattress, a look of pure satisfaction on her face. There was Marcus on Thursday, testing the bed's motor, raising and lowering the headboard with a focused expression, as if operating machinery. There were snippets of their conversations, caught when they came in to check on the room. I opened the audio for a file from Thursday evening. Their voices were clear. "Chloe, after the assessment Wednesday, we contact the lawyer. The one I found specializes in elder law. He said with a doctor's recommendation, we could file for temporary guardianship by Friday. Marcus, and she just stays here, in this bed. Chloe, initially. Then, once we have control, we can sell the house. That assisted living facility on the east side has a room. It's nice. She'll be with people her own age. Marcus, she'll hate it. Chloe, she won't have a choice, Marcus. It's not about what she wants. It's about what's safe and what's fair for our future." I stopped the playback. The words were clinical, cruel. They were perfect. I saved that specific audio file to my tablet and to a secure cloud folder Gloria had set up for me. I ejected the SD card and placed it in a small, sealed envelope. This was the primary evidence. Now for my own performance. I went to my bathroom. In a drawer, I had stage makeup from a long-ago community theater production. I took out a cream foundation a few shades lighter than my skin and applied it sparingly, blending it to create a pallid, washed-out effect. Under my eyes, I used a subtle grayish pigment to simulate deep shadows of sleeplessness and fatigue. I did not overdo it. The effect needed to be believable, not theatrical. In the mirror, I watched my vibrant, sharp face transform into that of a weary, unwell woman. It was a mask, and I was its master. I dressed in a simple, faded nightgown, one I never wore but kept for sentimental reasons. It added to the impression of someone who had given up on presentation. Next, I prepared my phone. I opened the voice memo app and set it to record. I placed the phone on the bedside table in the sewing room, screen down, but with the microphone unobstructed. It would capture everything. As a backup, I also started a video recording on my tablet, positioning it on a high bookshelf across the room, partially obscured by a stack of fabric. It gave a wider, silent view. I gathered the documents, not the originals, but the copies from Gloria, the new will, the power of attorney papers, the report from Dr. Ammon, which had arrived via secure email yesterday. I printed it. I placed these documents in a neat folder and laid it on the small rolling table next to the hospital bed. The final piece was my demeanor. I had to be in the bed when they found me. I had to look like I had capitulated. I walked to the bed, the cold metal of the rail under my hand. I climbed in. The mattress was firm, unyielding. I arranged the sheets over my legs. I laid my head back against the stiff pillow and closed my eyes for a moment, centering myself. I was not a victim waiting for rescue. I was a general in a fortress, awaiting the misguided attack. I opened my eyes. I reached for the folder and opened it, placing the first page, the will that disinherited them, face up on my lap. I positioned the remote control for the nanny cam beside my leg, under the sheet, where my hand could find it instantly. Then I waited. I heard them stirring downstairs around 9:30. The murmur of voices, the clatter of breakfast dishes. My absence would be noted. They would expect me to be slow, perhaps still in my room. Their plan was in motion. The assessment was in 3 days. They would be feeling confident, especially after the journal and my performance at dinner. Just after 10, I heard Chloe's voice on the stairs. "Ellie, are you awake? I'm coming up to check on you." I did not respond. I kept my breathing even, my eyes fixed on the doorway. The footsteps approached down the hall. They paused outside my bedroom door. A knock. "Ellie." Silence. Then the footsteps moved to the next door, the sewing room. The door was closed. I heard the handle turn. The door opened. Chloe stood there, backlit by the hall light. She was dressed in bright weekend casual wear, a stark contrast to the clinical room and my purposely wan appearance. Her eyes took in the scene, me in the bed, the documents, my face. A slow, incredulous smile spread across her face. It was a smile of utter victory. She turned her head and called out, her voice ringing with triumph. "Marcus, come here, you need to see this." I heard his heavier tread hurry down the hall. He appeared in the doorway, crowding behind her. His expression shifted from curiosity to shock, then to a relieved satisfaction. "Mom," he said, stepping into the room. "You're in the bed. Are you feeling that bad?" I remained still, my hands resting on the papers in my lap. I looked from his face to hers, seeing the naked greed in their eyes. This was the moment they had worked for. This was the culmination. I allowed my own lips to curve, just slightly. It was not a smile of illness. It was a smile of recognition. The trap was sprung. All that remained was the revelation. They stood in the doorway, their faces painted with triumph. Chloe's smile was wide and unguarded. Marcus's expression held a relieved satisfaction. They saw exactly what they wanted to see, a defeated woman in a hospital bed. I let the silence stretch for 3 full seconds. I watched the first faint flicker of uncertainty cross Chloe's face. My smile did not match the scene. "Good morning," I said. My voice was not weak. It was clear, steady, and carried the quiet authority of my own living room. "Close the door." Marcus blinked. "Mom." "Close the door, Marcus," I repeated, without raising my voice. "We need to talk about you moving out." The words landed in the room with physical weight. Chloe's smile vanished. "Ellie, what are you talking about? You're not well." "I am perfectly well," I said, cutting her off. I straightened my spine against the pillows. The movement was deliberate, showcasing control, not frailty. I picked up the top page from the folder on my lap. "This is my new last will and testament, executed and notarized last Thursday. It leaves my entire estate, including this house, to the City Library Foundation. It names my attorney, Gloria Richardson, as executor." It explicitly disinherits both of you, citing actions undertaken to undermine my autonomy and exploit my assets. The color drained from Marcus's face. He took a step forward. You can't do that. I'm your son. You were my son, I said, keeping my gaze level. Now you are my adversary. This document is legal and unassailable. Supporting it is a full psychiatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Raj Ammon, affirming my testamentary capacity and cognitive health. I tapped the next page. His report states I show no impairment. It is dated prior to your planned assessment, which he knows nothing about. Chloe found her voice sharp and shrill. This is nonsense. You're confused. You're sitting in a hospital bed. You've been forgetting things, having spells. We have evidence. You have fabricated symptoms and a bed you delivered without my consent, I stated. I have a video recording of you in this room, Chloe, admiring the mattress you plan to confine me to. I have audio recordings of you both plotting guardianship and the sale of my home. I reached under the sheet and produced the small remote for the nanny cam. I pointed it toward the porcelain dove on the shelf. The camera is in the dove. It has recorded every conversation in this room for the past week. I pressed a button on the remote. A small wireless speaker I had hidden on the bookshelf crackled to life. Their own voices filled the room. Chloe, after the assessment Wednesday, we contact the lawyer. The one I found specializes in elder laws. Marcus, and she just stays here, in this bed. Chloe, she won't have a choice, Marcus. It's not about what she wants. It's about what's safe and what's fair for our future. I stopped the playback. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ragged sound of Marcus's breathing. You, he choked out, you set us up. I documented your conspiracy, I corrected. You set yourselves up. You revealed your intentions in my home, believing I was either too foolish or too feeble to understand. You were wrong. Chloe's composure shattered. The mask of sweetness dissolved into raw fury. You deceitful old bitch, you led us on. All that, the journal, the dizzy spell, it was an act. It was a performance, I agreed calmly. And you were an eager audience. You saw only what you wanted to see. Your own greed blinded you. Marcus sank onto the small stool by the sewing table, his head in his hands. Oh, God. Here are your options, I said, my tone shifting to that of a business proposition. You will pack your things and leave this house today. You will cancel the upcoming assessment with Dr. Simmons's office. You will sign a legally binding agreement, prepared by Gloria Richardson, stating you will never contest my will or make any claim against my estate. In return, I will not file a police report for attempted elder financial abuse. I will not release these recordings to your employers or to the social circle you are so keen to impress, Chloe. I looked at each of them. Marcus was broken, staring at the floor. Chloe was seething, her hands clenched into fists. If you refuse, I continued, I will call the police now. I will provide them with the recordings, the documents, and the names of witnesses, my brother and my neighbor, who can attest to your public declarations of your plans. Gloria will immediately file for a restraining order and begin civil proceedings. The scandal will follow you. Any professional standing you have will be damaged. The choice is simple, exile or exposure. You wouldn't, Chloe spat. He's your son. The shame would hurt you too. The shame is yours, I said. I am the victim who outsmarted her predators. The story, if told, will be one of my victory, not yours. Marcus looked up, his eyes red. Mom, please, I'm sorry. We were stressed. We thought it was for the best. Do not insult me further with lies, I said, the ice in my voice finally showing a crack of the fury beneath. You thought it was for your best. You saw me as an obstacle to be cleared, a resource to be liquidated. There is no forgiveness for that. There is only this: leave my house and never contact me again. I reached over to the bedside table and picked up my phone. I stopped the voice memo recording. I held it up. This conversation is also recorded. Your decision, please. Chloe looked at Marcus, her expression desperate, commanding. He would not meet her eyes. He was crumbling under the weight of his own exposed venality. We'll sign, he mumbled, his voice thick. No, Chloe cried. We have no choice. he shouted, suddenly standing, turning on her. "It's over, Chloe. She beat us, don't you see? She knew everything. We're finished here." His outburst was the final surrender. Chloe stared at him, then at me, her face a canvas of hatred and defeat. She had no move left. The game was over. "Pack your belongings," I said, placing the documents back in the folder. "Gloria will be here with the agreement by noon. You will be gone by evening." I did not watch them leave the room. I looked out the window at the clear morning sky. The cold anger that had sustained me began to recede, leaving behind a vast, quiet emptiness. It was not peace, not yet, but it was the end of the war. The delivery at the door had been answered. They left in the late afternoon. Gloria arrived at noon as promised, with 2 copies of a succinct legal agreement. It stated that Marcus and Chloe Hawthorne relinquished all present and future claims to my estate, agreed never to contest my will, and would initiate no legal proceedings regarding my competence or care. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges or publicly disseminate the evidence. It was a cold, clean severance. They signed in the living room, Marcus's hand shaking, Chloe's signature an angry slash. Gloria notarized the documents. She gave me 1 copy, placed the other in her briefcase. She did not speak to them. Her presence was a wall of professional finality. The packing took hours. They moved through the house like ghosts, retrieving their belongings from the guest room, the bathroom, the kitchen drawers they had gradually colonized. I did not watch. I remained in the sewing room, but not in the bed. I sat in the chair by the window, the folder of documents on my lap, a sentinel in my reclaimed space. When the last suitcase was wheeled at the front door, I heard the trunk of Marcus's car slam shut. There was a long pause. Then the front door opened again. Marcus stood in the hallway, looking toward the sewing room. He did not come closer. "Goodbye, Mom," he said, his voice hollow. I did not respond. I looked at him, this stranger who shared my blood, and felt nothing but a distant, cold pity. He turned and left. The door closed a final time. The engine started, faded down the street. The silence that filled the house was different. It was not a waiting silence or a tense one. It was my own silence, deep and complete. I stood. My body felt stiff, but my mind was clear. I went to the kitchen. I put the kettle on for tea. While it heated, I called Lawrence. "It's done," I said when he answered. "They're gone." "They are gone. The legal agreement is signed." He let out a long breath. "Good, I'm coming over." "Not tonight, Lawrence. Tomorrow. Come for tea tomorrow. Bring Mrs. Wilkins." A pause. "You sure? She's a gossip." "I know. I want her to see. I want her to have the true story to tell." He understood. "All right, tomorrow." Next, I called the medical supply company. I scheduled a pickup for the bed for the following morning. The representative tried to argue about restocking fees. I read him the serial number from the invoice and stated, "This item was delivered without the consent of the occupant of the residence. You have 2 choices. Remove it tomorrow at no cost, or I will have my attorney contact you regarding the illegal placement of medical equipment as part of a fraudulent scheme." He scheduled the pickup. I drank my tea at the kitchen table in my usual spot. The house felt larger. The air felt lighter. The next morning, the same 2 men in blue uniforms returned. They did not crush the daffodils this time. They were careful. They disassembled the bed with efficient, impersonal movements, boxing up the chrome rails and the vinyl mattress. They carried the pieces out. I watched from the front porch. When the truck drove away, I went upstairs to the sewing room. The space where the bed had been was empty, marked only by slight indentations in the carpet. I opened the windows wide. A fresh breeze swept through, carrying the scent of cut grass. I began the process of moving my sewing table back to the center of the room. I returned the porcelain dove, with its hidden camera now removed, to its shelf. I took my time. It was a ritual of reclamation. In the afternoon, Lawrence and Mrs. Wilkins arrived. I had baked scones, a small, normal act of hospitality. We sat in the living room. Mrs. Wilkins was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Ellie, I don't know what to say. The things I heard on Friday, I've been so worried." "There is no need for worry now," I said, pouring tea. "Marcus and Chloe have moved out. We had a disagreement about my future. They wanted to manage it for me. I preferred to manage it myself. She leaned forward, her eyes wide. But the bed, the talk of guardianship. A misunderstanding, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. They were overzealous. I am perfectly capable. We have settled matters legally, and they have agreed to respect my wishes. I am sure they are embarrassed by the whole affair. I gave a slight, dismissive wave of my hand. It was a masterpiece of understated narrative control. It gave her enough to satisfy her curiosity, framed in a way that painted me as dignified and them as mildly foolish, not criminal. It was the story she would tell, and it served my purpose. Lawrence watched me, a grudging admiration in his eyes. He knew the full truth, but he saw the strategy in my watered-down version. It protected my privacy while still marking my victory. After they left, Lawrence lingered at the door. "You okay, Ellie?" "I will be," I said, and for the first time I believed it. The days that followed were quiet. I resumed my routines, gardening in the morning, reading in the afternoon, a weekly call to Gloria. I changed the locks on the doors. I removed Marcus's name from my emergency contacts. The house was wholly mine again. One evening, a week after they left, I sat on the front porch with a cup of tea. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. The daffodils were fully spent now, their green stalks still standing. I would cut them back tomorrow. I thought about the boy Marcus had been, the man he became. The grief was still there, a small, hard stone in my chest, but it was no longer sharp. It was smoothed by the certainty that I had done what was necessary. I had not sought to destroy him, only to protect myself from his destruction. There is a difference. The revenge was not in his humiliation, though that was a consequence. The revenge was in this moment. The quiet, the safety, the steam rising from my cup into the cool evening air. It was in the knowledge that my mind, my will, and my home had withstood the assault. I had reclaimed my narrative. I sipped my tea. A neighbor walked a dog past the house. We waved. The ordinary world continued. Inside, the house was clean, ordered, and silent. My house, my peace. The delivery at the door had been met, examined, and sent away. The transaction was complete. I had paid the price in advance in years of love and trust. Now the account was closed. I was free.